wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
Welcome to the Sunday Stoic podcast, where we discuss the ancient philosophy of Stoicism and how it applies to modern life. Today will be a solo episode with me, Dan Monks of Queens, New York City. Previously, Steve and I discussed shame as it relates to Stoicism. We examined when it is appropriate or even beneficial to feel shame, and also when it is not appropriate to feel shame. The previous discussion centered on shame as a state of being internal to ourselves. But what do we do when we encounter the shamelessness of someone else? We live in a complicated world, filled with people that have different perspectives on how to live, and that can lead us to encounter people that behave in ways that we find disappointing and potentially even upsetting. How do we navigate the world in a way that permits us to encounter shamelessness in others and not only maintain our equanimity, but fulfill our social roles despite the poor behavior of others? When I refer to shamelessness, I do not refer to people who have no way of knowing that they are violating a social norm. When I refer to shamelessness, I am referring to people that should know there are certain norms and social expectations and couldn't care less about those norms. Like all cultures, New York City has certain social rules that might seem strange and unknowable to people from elsewhere. For example, in New York City, the right side of an escalator is for standing, and the left side is for people that want to walk up or down the escalator. In touristy areas like Times Square, Grand Central, Penn Station, and JFK Airport, it's not uncommon to encounter people that do not know this norm, and they stand on the left side, oblivious to the fact that they are breaking the New York social compact. Sometimes this causes frustration in New Yorkers that have a preference for walking on escalators. Despite the hard feelings of my fellow New Yorkers, this is not an example of shamelessness. The tourist has no idea about this social rule and would likely comply if they did know. Shamelessness requires an element of knowledge. They have to know that they are violating a social rule and choose to do so anyway and with no apparent remorse. An example of this could be something like someone smoking in a subway car, or blasting music on their Bluetooth speaker on mass transit, or playing Candy Crush with the volume cranked up. Sometimes, encountering someone who is shameless can trigger a proto-passion of anger. Their violation of the social compact can feel like a personal affront and injustice. This aggression will not stand! When you encounter shamelessness and feel anger forming, it can help to remember that the shameless people are only harming themselves, because they are corrupting their own character and alienating themselves from their fellow humans. And remember, they are not truly harming you, because they do not have the ability to affect your moral character. It can be helpful to remember the advice of Marcus Aurelius in Meditations 2.1. You knew when you left your house in the morning that you would likely encounter people who conduct themselves in an antisocial manner. That anticipation can take a lot of the sting out of an encounter. Instead of the negative behavior of someone else taking you by surprise and angering you, it can become, "Oh, there you are. I was wondering when I'd meet you today." And from that state of mind, it is much easier to maintain your equanimity and behave appropriately. As the emperor of the Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius was surrounded by ambitious people, and few of them were likely to be Stoic practitioners dedicated to the path of the Prokopton. Consequently, Marcus Aurelius frequently encountered people that wanted something from him, and not his wisdom. They wanted externals. The meditations are full of Marcus Aurelius reminding himself how to relate properly with difficult people. For example, when you are offended by the shamelessness of any man, straightaway ask yourself, can the world exist without shameless men? It cannot. Therefore, do not demand the impossible. This person is one of these shameless people who must needs be in the universe. Have the same question also at hand when you are shocked at deception, faithlessness, disloyalty, or any other sin. For while you remember that it is impossible that the class should not exist, you will be more charitable to each particular individual. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations, Book 9.42. In Meditations 2.1, Marcus also reminded himself daily of his membership in a world community. In the view of Marcus Aurelius, by virtue of being human, each person encountered is endowed with a portion of the divine logos in the form of their rational and social nature. And humanity is interconnected with every other human by virtue of each person being connected to the same logos. When someone behaves poorly, it is because they are confused in reference to good and bad, and they are only harming themselves by behaving poorly. We should do our best to reconcile and work with our fellow humans, even the antisocial. Our interconnectedness with other humans is the basis of Stoic oikeiosis and cosmopolitanism. Modern Stoics that do not ascribe to the concept of the divine logos sometimes try to maintain oikeiosis and cosmopolitanism by saying that humans evolved as social animals. Perhaps a future episode will explore oikeiosis further. Shamelessness has implications when choosing our companions and friends. Spending time with shameless people can have a morally corruptive influence on our own character. Humans are social creatures, and we cannot help but be influenced by the people we spend time with. That is not to say that when a friend or potential friend behaves poorly on one occasion, that you immediately write them off and ghost them. Part of our role as a friend and companion is to be a positive influence on our friends. None of us are sages after all, and we will all make mistakes on occasion. Perhaps your companion was just having a bad day in a moment of weakness. If they have done wrong, it can be helpful to call them out and see how they react. If they react with remorse, then there may be hope for them. It may be wise to keep a closer eye on them for a while until you are satisfied that it was just a moment of weakness and not indicative of a corrupt character. If they react to being called out with anger or indifference, it may be wise to reconsider spending time with them going forward. Be assured that even if a person be ever so pure himself, yet, if his companion be corrupted, he who converses with the corrupt person will be likewise corrupted. Epictetus, Enchiridion 33.6. Seneca expressed the importance of being wary of keeping company with the corrupt, but he also acknowledged that friends are responsible for working to improve each other. Much harm is done by a single example of indulgence or greed. The familiar friend, if he be luxurious, weakens and softens us imperceptibly. The neighbor, if he be rich, rouses our covetousness. The companion, if he be slanderous, rubs off some of his rust upon us, even though we be spotless and sincere. What then do you think the effect will be on character when the world at large assaults us? You must either imitate or loathe the world. But both of those courses are to be avoided. You should not copy the bad simply because they are many, nor should you hate the many because they are unlike you. Withdraw into yourself as far as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual, for men learn while they teach. Seneca, Letter 7.7. So do not expect perfection in your friends and companions. As long as your friend honestly values virtue and strives to be a better person, that is what matters. After all, we are not sages either. Ask yourself, is it true that I'm never an asshole? Do I not have flaws of my own? However, if you detect a pattern of shamelessness in your companion, it may be wise to discontinue friendship with that person. Without shame, the person is not going to work to improve their character and will only be a corruptive influence in your life, to the detriment of your moral character. A more malignant form of shamelessness is when someone commits a crime or serious injustice, and when they are caught, their reaction is not one of embarrassment or remorse, but rather a shrug of the shoulder or outright defiance. We live in a time where this seems to happen more and more regularly, even among public figures who purport to be leaders. The rich and powerful get caught committing acts that ought to have consequences, but instead of remorse and contrition, the reaction is, yeah, so what? I wish I had the grand solution to put our society back on the path to a sense of shame and decency. For now, I can just say that we should all do what we can, where we are, and within the roles we fill in society. If you are in a position of law enforcement, the judiciary, media, or government, as a Stoic practitioner, try to do what you can to make criminal activity have consequences and accountability. The only constant in the universe is change, so perhaps we are just in a societal swing of the pendulum toward darkness. Perhaps we can collectively swing the pendulum of shame and decency back toward a more positive and less corrupt society. It is a duty of a Stoic practitioner to do what they can to stand up to injustice and correct wrongs where and when they are able. That is part of embodying the cardinal virtue of justice. But even when standing against injustice, the Stoic practitioner strives to conduct themselves without allowing the passion of anger to take control, because it is impossible to perform appropriate actions under the controlling influence of a passion like anger. Correcting injustice by committing injustices of our own does not make the world better, and would be morally corruptive. Moral corruption is the only harm, and it's entirely self-inflicted. And now, a brief review. Shamelessness is more than just ignorance of social norms, but knowingly violating social norms with indifference and without remorse. Shameless behavior can trigger anger as a proto-passion, and the Stoic response is to remember that shameless people harm only themselves by corrupting their character. The shameless person cannot harm your moral character unless you allow it. And per the advice of Marcus Aurelius, we should anticipate encountering antisocial behavior to reduce the emotional shock. View shameless people as inevitable. This fosters patience and magnanimity. Reframe the encounters with shameless people as being expected and not personal affronts. Poor behavior stems from confusion about good and bad, and shameless behavior harms the shameless person, not others. Also, shamelessness has implications when we're choosing our companions. Choosing to spend time with shameless people risks our own moral corruption. That being said, one mistake does not define a person. Friends should influence each other positively. We should call out wrongdoing when we see it. Remorse in a companion suggests the potential for growth, but anger or indifference suggests deeper character issues. Aim to associate with those who make you better and whom you can help improve. Do not expect perfection in your friends. Value sincere commitment to virtue. We should reflect on our own flaws before judging others. Remove the plank from your eye. Shamelessness is more dangerous when crimes or injustices are met with defiance instead of remorse. This is especially troubling among the powerful and public leaders. Stoics in roles of authority should work to uphold accountability and consequences. Society may be in a moral downturn, but change is constant. Stoics have a duty to resist injustice within their roles. Embody the virtue of justice without being ruled by anger, because fighting injustice with injustice only corrupts oneself. Lastly, moral corruption is the only true harm, and that harm is self-inflicted. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please send us an email at sundaystoic@gmail.com. If you enjoy our podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on whatever platform you use to listen to us. Your feedback helps us to reach new audience members and build the podcast. We look forward to releasing a new episode next week, fate permitting. And as Steve always says, Carpe Diem!